Hello, welcome. Congratulations on making it past week one and doing the roles integration. I trust it was absolutely incredible and that your coach has served you really, really, really well. The exciting part about where you are now is you have completed one of the most powerful processes that exists within the coaching world. There's only two real processes that can create massive shift in the identity level of people. The first one is roles, and the second one is the values that we have. And so you're pretty much 50% to the way of completely recreating your new identity. So it's a pretty awesome place. I trust you're having an absolutely wonderful time. And today we're going to be covering the pre-learning for values work. Specifically, what are values? Why are they important? Designing your compelling future, an emotional hierarchy. So understanding the different intensities of values, the different types of values, and a little bit of self-reflection again at the end of the call. So you do some home play before you catch up with your coach. So what are values? So the best way that I've heard values described is by a mentor of mine, Jaron Pearson, who talks about values being the upfront motivation before anything else happens. So what do I mean by that? So values are the driving force for what we find important. If we're doing an action, chances are it is something that deep down is important to us, which means there must be a value driving it. Now, if we think about most conflict in people or most conflicts that we have, it's usually a clash of values. For example, someone might value respect and someone else within the workplace might value results. And so you may see this in a sales management scenario or a corporate scenario where you have salespeople who are after the deal and the result, and then you have admin people who are after the correctness and the accuracy. So there's a clash in values. Another example may be the difference between people who are in the personal training industry and people who aren't. So the people in personal training, they have a value around health. And so that drives all of their decisions and all of their actions about their career. And for those that aren't in the personal training, they have different values, which is why so many people struggle to create change in their own health and well-being, is because if there's not a value around health and well-being, there's no upfront motivation to push the person to want to do the action. And so on the flip side, if you can figure out what your values are, if you can align them with where you're going, then the way in which you achieve your goals almost feels effortless, because all of the upfront motivation that you have is aligned with the goals that you want. And for most people, there's conflicts. So maybe you've had the experience where you know that you want to be healthy, or maybe you know that you want to have some new results in business. But for whatever reason, when it comes to taking that action of making sure that you have habits that support wellness, or actually closing the deal that's going to grow your business, you've stopped, or you haven't done it, or you procrastinated, or you pushed it away. That's because you either don't have the value or you have a value conflict. So what do I mean by that? So a value conflict is, for example, there may be someone who wants to grow their business, right? And in order to grow the business, you'd have to have a value around results and wealth and money. But they might have a value around connection and contribution and care. And so you've got this person who's trying to grow this business who has values around connection, care, and contribution, which aren't going to help them make money. And so they come up against this brick wall, essentially, where they feel like they've changed their behavior so many times, they've learned all these skills, but their environment is still not changing. And so this is why values become so important, because after we clear the role, then what happens is we're left with the driving forces that the role learnt. And so for most people, values, the values that they have come from this period between 7 and 14. So the 0 to 7 period is what we call the imprint period. And this is where we're with our tribe and we have no filter for our cognitive mind, and everything that comes in becomes our reality. And so we're learning from the tribe here, what are the things that are important to the tribe, therefore what is going to be important to me. And then after we've collected a little bit of what the tribe has done and what's important to the tribe, we'll model that, and then we'll look at uh, in the modeling period, we'll go, I wonder what is important to other people or people that are slightly different from my tribe to try and get some contrast. And so then what happens between this identity period, which is 0 to 7, and the next period, 0 to 14, we're starting to look at different other tribes that are not our tribe to see what values they have, and then we put it together. So we go, okay, that value worked here, that value worked here, so these are now going to be my values. And because this happens at such a young age, this then dictates all of the decisions that somebody makes throughout their career and through the rest of their life. There's a reason why so many people go to nursing, because some of their values are around care and contribution and looking after others. For other people, the people that would go to things like police force or maybe being a firefighter, there's a sense of rescue, or maybe there's a sense of doing the right thing or righteousness or virtue, because that was important to the tribe. For the people that do really well naturally in business, they have values around results. Whatever tribe that they were in, whatever tribe they modeled, it was really important for them to have values around getting stuff done. So these periods, if we don't change the values that we're given, we're completely at a loss to be able to really truly affect lasting and permanent change. And the mistake I see so many people make, and this is fortunate that you're on this journey, is that they try to change their values before they change their role. And so how this is a problem is because the role decides what is important. And if the role is still in place, for example, hero or good girl or good boy or the scapegoat or the rebel or whatever you called your role, if that primary person is still in place, then your values will be what that primary person or that primary role decided was important. So the role then shapes the values that you learn, which shapes the behaviors that you do. So now that we've let go of the role, or you've resigned from the role and you've started to heal, the next thing that we need to do is we need to take the values from your old role away, and we need to install new values so that you can move forward and create lasting and permanent change. So I trust that makes sense. So how we go about doing that is you can do your own version of this, or we can send you a spreadsheet to make a copy. But what we want to do now is we want to design your compelling future. We want to design the ideal life that you want to move towards. And we do this by doing a little bit of an audit around what is happening in your life at the moment. So these specific areas that will get you to grade out of 10. So mentally, so how your thinking situation is, physically with your health, attractive, not just attractiveness, but also energetic, emotionally. So what kind of emotional state that you feel you're in, your relationship quality, financially, career, all of these areas we want you to do an audit on to just give yourself a rating, like 0 being terrible, 10 being wonderful. And you do that for right now. Then 5 years from now, the ideal life that you want to live, if you could have no limits, if you could just truly dream and allow yourself to have anything that you wanted, what would it be? What would be happening? And describe it. And the key here is to do 3 specific criteria. So number 1, visually, what would you see? What would you see around you 5 years from now? And what do you see around you right now? Number 2, who would be there? Like, are there people involved? Are you holding yourself a specific way? So start thinking about the way in which you would see the situation. The next one is feeling. How would you feel in the situations? So how do you feel now mentally? How would you feel if all of these other things 5 years from now were in place? The next one is sound. What would you hear? What would you hear now? What are the conversations that you're having? What are the noises that you're hearing? What are the clients saying? And then the future, same thing. What's the conversations that you're having differently 5 years from now from when you created this change? And then the last thing is what we tell ourselves. So for each one of these things, what are you telling yourself about the current situation? What are you going to tell yourself about the situation 5 years from now? Then the more detail that you give this, the even more powerful your change is going to be. So this is not something that I want you to rush. This is something that I want you to sit down, spend the time, treat yourself, because you're actually defining your compelling future. And when we align your values with your compelling future, you will head there regardless of how hard you try or hustle. If your values are in line with the life that you want, then all of your upfront motivation is going to move you towards this future. And the beautiful thing about this process is you don't even have to have conscious awareness, or you don't even have to have conscious belief of this process. That it works regardless. It works on a subconscious level. Because if you think about it, at the moment, a lot of the decisions that you may find in conflict with yourself, or you may not enjoy about the behaviors that you're doing, it feels like it's kind of a subconscious drive anyway. Right? It feels like it's not really you making that decision, and you put as much willpower as you can to try to change it, but it doesn't change. So if we can rewire that part of your brain to have that upfront motivation to move you towards the future that you want to create, then you don't need willpower. You'll just naturally gravitate your way towards it. So this is the power of values, and it cannot be understated how life-changing this can be if you spend the time to truly decide what it is that you want. So this is something when we get into the values elicitation with your coach, is we're going to talk about the emotional hierarchy. So the emotional hierarchy, and I'll explain the image on the left and on the right, the emotional hierarchy is understanding where the types of different values, this model helps you understand the types of values that we have, but more specifically, whether a value is moving towards love. So what I mean by that is if the value is it's high quality versus low quality. This is kind of what the emotional hierarchy and teaches us. We're trying to establish if the value that we've given or the words that we've given are high quality or low quality. Now, what is high quality and low quality? Another way to think about high quality, low quality is, does this state that we want to live give us more possibility in our life, or does it give us less possibility? Does it give us scarcity and necessity? Because if we have values that are based in low quality, which is necessity and scarcity, then what we see in our reality and in our world will be through those filters of necessity, scarcity, and fear. So I want you to imagine that your values are also like a lens or a filter in which you see the world. So if you have values that are full of love and care and gratitude and joy and possibility, you're going to see the world in a very different way than what you would see the world if it was full of fear, scarcity, and necessity. So I'll give you an example. So one of the most common values that people say they have is trust or respect. Now, trust and respect, if we think about this emotional hierarchy, is there necessarily love and trust and respect? Or does this more come from a place of fear? And so when you start to think about this, if we think about trust and respect, if we have to say that we need trust, then we are probably scared that there's not enough trust in the world. So that state that we have comes from a place of fear. Whereas if we had a value that was closer to love, for example, love or connection or gratitude or care, there's less feelings of fear and tightness around that kind of value. So many people, and another one, for example, is respect. And the thing with respect is it's so far out of our control that if it's really important to us and then somebody, inverted commas, disrespects us, we experience immense pain. So what I was saying in one of the earlier slides is the source of all conflict is, number one, assumption, and number two, a clash in values. So if we have a value of respect so far up and it's super important to us, we run the risk of going through life being upset often. Because the reality in the world that we live in is people are so different that there's so many opportunities for us to be disrespected. There's so many people who potentially think about themselves before others. They don't really understand you. They don't care to understand you. So you'll live in a life where your values are constantly being knocked up against the wall, which means that you constantly experience pain, because these are the most important emotional states to you. If you can't experience respect day to day, or you can't experience trust day to day, you're going to have a lot of pain because you don't get to live the things that are most important to you. Whereas if you had values around gratitude, care, and compassion, these things are a lot more empowered. There's more possibility for you to be able to show care, gratitude, and possibility, which means you get to live that higher state within you, the joyous state, the state that really truly lights you up more often. So your life becomes higher quality. And so this is the key, is to figure out, when I'm saying my values and when my coach is working with me, am I giving values that are closer towards fear and necessity, or am I giving values that are moving towards love and possibility? And the idea is, when you elicit your current values, or the values that your role or your outer self has given you, a lot of them are going to be down the bottom. They're going to be towards fear and necessity. And so when your coach is asking you questions, you don't want to jump all the way up to love quickly, because, for example, like if I was to say to you, so for what purpose do you want trust? Now, what is trust ultimately about? And you would say, well, if I have a value around trust, it probably means that I can connect with people. And then so we go, okay, so for what purpose would you want to connect? And you would want to connect because you care. Great. So, and if you cared, for what purpose do you want care? So I could be a good person. And for what purpose do you want to be a good person? So I could contribute to others. And then if you could contribute to others, why is that important to you? Because it's important that we have compassion. And so when you see this, it's a natural progression up the hierarchy from a trust-based fear value all the way up to starting to get to love. And so this is the key thing with your coaches, is when they ask a question, what they're going to be looking for is, did you jump really quickly? Did you go from fear to love straight away? And then they're going to ask you a question to bring you down. So they're probably going to say, okay, so you said the purpose of trust is love. So what would come before love? And so what they're looking for is, they're looking for the next level up from trust, so you can slowly climb the ladder and raise that value all the way up to love and possibility. Because if we can move trust into something which is like care or compassion, then your world will have so much more. You have so much more possibility. You'll experience more joy if your value is not about trust and it's about compassion. So that could be compassion towards self, even though that you might have trusted the wrong person. Or that could be compassion towards others, knowing that the reason why they screwed you over is because they're deeply, deeply hurting. So that empowers you. It gives you choice, which means you can experience a greater quality of life. So this is the emotional hierarchy, and this is just what I want you to keep in the back of your mind. You don't have to fully understand it, but you just need to be able to look at, okay, when your values come out, are they more towards fear or are they more towards love? So on the left-hand side here, this is how we gauge where are the values at the moment. So things like fear, grief, depression, despair, powerlessness, insecurity, guilt, these all sit low in the hierarchy. These are all in the fear and the necessity base. If we look at the values on top, the number ones, joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, appreciation, and passion, enthusiasm, eagerness, and happiness, these are all love and possibility-based values, or specifically emotions. So this is what I want you to focus on. This is just to give you some context around, okay, so what would the words be that I'm looking for that are above where I am now, right? And you don't have to use these words. You'll intuitively know what it feels like, and your coach will be able to help you piece that together. So this is where we want to talk about the different types of values, because this will allow you to create an even more powerful change, even quicker, that lasts even deeper. So for you, the key thing to understand here is, the first one is the difference between a vehicle value and an emotional value, right? So a vehicle value is something that we ride in order to access the value or the actual emotion. So the example here is a relationship. A relationship, so if you said, so what's important to me, our relationships are important to me, that's an example of a vehicle value. Because within that vehicle, you have passengers of different feelings or emotions or values, right? So within relationship, within that is connection. And above connection is care. And above care is compassion. And above compassion is love. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that your values are not vehicles and they're emotions. And it's okay if you say a vehicle value to your coach. That's totally okay. Their job will be to help you unpack the vehicle so we can access the emotions. So this is just key for you to know, that if you have things like relationship or business, these are examples of vehicle values. So we want to unpack it, open the door, open the boot, see what's under the hood to tap into the emotion. So what would relationship give you? What does the business give you? I trust that makes sense. What does friendship give you? What does career give you? And the next value here, the second one, is aspiring values versus actual values. So an aspiring value is something that you say you want, but doesn't show up in your life right now, right? So one of the examples that I have of people building their business, they say, oh, results are my actual value. But we look at their business and there's no money in the bank, right? Or they don't have any clients. So that would be an example of an aspiring, something that they wish they had, not what they actually had. Another example, you could have someone who is going to the gym and they say that their value is around health and well-being and energy, but they aren't in shape. So that's an aspiring value versus an actual value. Yeah, and sure, there's a lag time where people could be in the transition, and that's totally cool. But if you were saying that your value from the last 12 months, 24 months has been health, but you're not healthy, that's an aspiring value, not an actual value. I trust that makes sense. So we want to make sure that the values that you list are not things that you wish you had right now. They're what you actually have right now based on the results that you have till this moment. The next one, the third one, is moving away from fear or towards love. And this is similar to the previous slide, are the values closer towards fear and necessity, or are they filled with more love and possibility? And so this is just for you to be aware of. You don't have to fully understand the concept. This is the things that your coach is going to be looking for. And they're going to be asking you questions to make sure that all of your values are full of love and possibility as opposed to fear and necessity. Because if you have fear and necessity, your life is going to be painful. But if you have love and possibility, you're going to experience a high quality life. You're going to have more enjoyment, more fulfillment, all of the things that are truly important to you. So the last one is value conflicts. And this is one of my personal favorites. Two examples. The first one is the business owner who says they want to build a business, but freedom is important to them. So if we think about building a business, if freedom is somebody's value, so the first thing is freedom is a vehicle value. It's not actually an emotion. Within freedom, it would give someone something. So if freedom's a value of yours, but you want to build a business, you actually have a conflict. Because what will happen is you won't do the work that needs to be done because it will conflict with your ability to have choices and be free. So as long as freedom exists as a value of yours, because if it's been installed from the ages of 7 to 14, you'll never grow a business because you don't have results as a value. If you have freedom, you can't have results. So what your coach is also going to look for is different conflicts that you have. Another one is, let's say, for example, you want to be great at sales, you want to make more sales revenue, right? You're going to need to have values around wealth. But most people have values around care and kindness. So they can't sell and close deals because they feel like their care and kindness will be compromised. Excuse me. So this is so key for your coach to be aware of, but also for you to be aware of. Like, this will start making sense around why it's been so hard to change some things in your life. Why it's been so hard for your business to take off the ground, because your business needs to value results, but you have values around care and contribution. This is why it's been really hard to create the change in your weight or your finances, is because you have values around freedom, you have no values around wealth. Do you know how hard it is to stick to a spending plan or a budget if you value freedom and not wealth? It's really, 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 really difficult. So understanding the value conflict when we go through the next part of the process, it will explain so deeply and profoundly why it is that you are where you are now, which is empowering, because what that means is when we shift your values and we install new ones, the change you can create can be massive. One of the clients that I did this process with, we shifted their values, and in their business, they did, I think, $42,000 within 7 days of shifting their values. So this was in a business concept. We've had other clients who have shifted values around becoming healthier or wealthier or more of an inspiration. And they've been walking every single morning since we did the values. So it's the upfront motivation that was just like, I'm going to go walk. They went vegetarian for a time because they had this new upfront motivation around what is important to me. And so this is the gift that values can give you, is we've taken away the role, which is the primary thing that keeps most people stuck. Now we're peeling back the layers and going, hey, we need to install this, we need to install this, we need to install this. And these two processes together are what's going to be able for you to completely turn and transform your life. These two processes alone. Everything else is really just cream on top. When if we've resigned you from your role and now we're installing values that are going to help you create the life that you want, you're truly on the way to living a deep and fulfilled life that you can truly be happy, proud, and it's something that you want to share with others. So, without further ado, how do I find my values? You're saying. Great question. So this is a process where I want you to take some time out. So this is the self-reflection part. Just take some time out, just sit down and just relax, take a couple of deep breaths, get nice and comfy, get a coffee or a tea, put some nice music on. And I really want you to sit and think and just go ask yourself these following questions. What have you spent your time on the last 12 to 24 months? What has taken up your time? And the interesting thing is if you're doing these classes, then somewhere on your values, you must value growing, right? Or you must value personal development. So personal development would be an example of a vehicle value. So then you want to ask yourself, you want to go, so if personal development has been important, what does that give me? Oh, it gives me the ability to grow. Cool. Okay, cool. So now growth goes down. What have you spent your money on? I've spent my money on date nights or hotels or flights. Okay, so date nights, hotels, and flights, these are all the vehicles. So what does that give me? Date nights, hotels, and flights gives me, I did it with my partner, so it was about connection. Great. And for what purpose do I want connection? Because love. I enjoy love. Wonderful. And so this is, you're just going to ask yourself all of these questions, and you're going to be like, is that a vehicle value? And if that's a vehicle value, you're going to ask yourself, well, I wonder what that gives me. Or like, why would I want that? And you want to try and get to the emotional, actual values as opposed to just the vehicle values. There's some fun ones here. What's been your primary focus? So what do you think about constantly? What pisses you off truly? Like, what could you jump on Facebook, have a massive rant, or what are like some pet peeves that you see that really grind your gears? What are you passionate about? You could spend hours talking about. For me, it's coaching. What does coaching give me? Coaching gives me significance. For what purpose do I want significance? So I can make an impact, make a difference in people's lives. Why do I want that? Because compassion and contribution is important to me. So you see how we're moving our thinking up by asking ourselves the question, for what purpose do I want that? And what does that give me? To make sure that we don't just have a vehicle value, we've got an emotional, actual value. Another one here, what's a deal breaker for you in business and relationship? What does the world ultimately need more of? And what's a pet peeve of yours? These are just some base things to get you started. But you've got enough here to start figuring out what has truly been important to you. And what I want you to do is just want you to write them down on a list, because you're going to share them with your coach. Write them down on your list, and that's all you need to do at this stage, is you just need to write them down. Make sure you have as many emotional values as possible. If you have a few vehicle values, that's okay. Make sure you've asked yourself the question, what does this vehicle value give me? What is the purpose of this vehicle value? And remember, if you get stuck, it's okay. This is quite a taxing process. It's quite a lot to put on our brains. So if you're stuck, the answer is always up. What do I mean by that? Is actually change your physiology, look up, and then ask yourself, for what purpose? Or why do I want this? Right? So it's always, the answer is always up, is thinking, how do I get further to love? Right? Because your thinking gets stuck the further you go down the hierarchy. So when you're in fear, scarcity, necessity, you'll be stuck. But if you change your physiology to look up, you'll find the answers 9 times out of 10. Trust that makes sense. So then, once you got your values out and you've listed them all, what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at them and just go, is there anything missing? Like if I was to sum me up in like 5 to 10 words, you should max have 10. Any more than 10, there's probably some double ups. So if you have more than 10, you've kind of doubled up, which means one of your values could be included in another one. Let's say, for example, it's connection and love. So if you have connection and love, chances are connection can sit within love, right? So you could pack connection up and put it in love. So you could get rid of connection and just have love instead, right? So you should have between 5 and 10. So then I want you to ask, it's similar to the roles, is now we just want to do a little bit of intention building for you around what life is going to be like if you install your values, or if you keep your values this way and you don't change them. And let's say that we install a whole new set of values, which is what you're going to do with your coach. If you install a whole new set of values, what would life be like? And you don't have to know the values yet, but just imagine going back to your compelling future and thinking, you know, if I did live this life, what would that be like for me? How would I feel if this was my life? And just go through and answer all of these questions. And then lastly, what do I need to let go of in order to create this change? Now, once you've done this, you've recorded your values, you've gone through this, you've sat with this, you've painted that picture of your intention of where you want to be, and you're reasonably excited about it. Then what I want you to do is I want you to book your call in with your coach. You're going to do the values process, which is we're going to find the values that are missing that are going to take you towards your goal, and then we're going to install those values within you, and then we're going to add some rules around them. So how do you know it's time to experience those values? And I trust all of this will start making sense for you as soon as you jump on that call with your coach. So the key here, your action point, is to figure out what your baseline values are right now with the criteria that we've talked about. Then the next one is to answer these questions. You can either write the answers down. I encourage you to write the answers down. The kinesthetic association will be even more powerful for you. So kinesthetic association, the feeling when you write things down is more powerful. You don't have to. That's completely up to you. And then once all of that's done, you book in with your coach, and they'll do the values process with you. So congratulations making it this far. After doing this next process, you will have completed the two most powerful processes that exist when rewriting our identity and changing who we are at our core. So I trust this has been a wicked journey so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week.